Hello, everyone, and welcome to our closing main stage panel. This panel focuses on future trends in payments, and I'm very pleased to welcome a number of different perspectives to the stage. I think a lot about what it's going to be like to have conversations with Payments Canada's members over the coming years, and I think the folks up here represent the types of leadership that I'll be having a lot of conversations with. So the challenger banks, the large financial services and payments services technology providers, the new fintechs, paytechs, fraud techs, and the largest financial institutions in the world. It's going to be interesting to have those conversations with everybody in the room. Let's start by introducing these folks, and I'll turn to John.
Thank you, Susan. Before I start, I want to say thank you and acknowledge what a fantastic job the Payments Canada does with the summit. It's great to see so many familiar faces out there. I'm John Landry. I'm the CEO and president of People's Group. Been here for a year. Seeing many familiar faces out there from the 25 years at Citibank before. And just to introduce People's Group for just a moment, we are a 40-year-old bank and trust, and we are the power behind challenger banks and fintechs and merchants in Canada. About 1,500 really innovative folks. The presenter up here earlier, I think, is pretty a great example of the kind of innovators that we have in our market. And we provide the full set of services for fintechs and challenger banks to take their capability to market. So
Thanks, Susan, first for having me. My name's Lacy Lauks, and I lead Visa Consulting and Analytics for Visa Canada. As the payments consulting arm for Visa, our mission is to unlock growth opportunities for our clients. So whether you're an issuer, a fintech, or other player in the ecosystem, we leverage our data and payments expertise to help you acquire new customers and better engage and drive customer loyalty with your existing customers. In Canada, we have a large and growing team, but we also benefit from global scale and learnings from other markets. So across the world, we're now 1,300 payments consultants and data scientists, and we continue to invest in the business. In Canada alone, we plan to triple the size of the business in the next 5 years. And in doing that, it's really about bringing new capabilities to our clients to help them navigate the future trends, much like the ones we're talking about today.
Nuno.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nuno Sebastião. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Feedzai. At Feedzai, we are the largest independent financial crime prevention company in the world. To give you an idea of stats, we protect around $8 trillion of payments every year, protecting well over 1 billion consumers throughout the four corners of the world. Really happy to be here. We have a strong presence in Canada. Some of our partners sit right here. And quite happy to be here, yeah.
Ramesh.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks for having us on the panel today, and congrats on a wonderful summit so far, and I'm sure it'll be for the next couple of days. My name is Ramesh Siromani, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for our personal bank in RBC. And my additional responsibilities include looking after enterprise payments and innovation across the bank. And my experience includes doing payments and banking for about 25 plus years, both in banks and as a consultant. So have experience both as an operator and as an advisor. And in the bank, RBC, as everybody knows, it's a large bank running a lot of payments in Canada and globally. And we're looking forward to all the improvements and innovation that we as a group are doing here in Canada and across the globe.
Super, thank you. All right, so before coming to Canada about 8 years ago, I spent 25 years in the United States building large-scale businesses in the digital banking and the payment space. And I was fond of telling my leadership and management teams that I'd rather be a bad manager where the market trends favored me than a good one where they don't. And the folks who are up here have to make the difficult decisions about where they invest dollars on behalf of their organizations in the interests of building their businesses. So what I'd like to ask them right now is specifically, where do you see, what would you predict some of the biggest drivers of transformation in payments will be over the coming few years. And we'll start with John.
Thank you. So I'll talk about this in terms of drivers for change and drivers for stability, I think. And in terms of drivers for change, there's 3 or 4 that I want to call out. One in particular starts with the consumer, with the end user. There is an insatiable thirst, desire, need or want to make things easier, cheaper, faster, cooler, more flexible. Canadians travel throughout the world. We're well connected. And you see things that are present and work in other marketplaces. And so that competitive drive is really, I think, the number one thing that's really gonna continue to drive the evolution of payments and the financial services marketplace in Canada more broadly. Also competition, and I'm gonna break this into 2. Competition from abroad, so fintechs, challenger banks, and similar organizations that have launched in other marketplaces, have had success, and they see the Canadian market and they say, we wanna come here. Also, grown in Canada competition and really, really innovative ideas. Again, like Charles Andre that was up here earlier, there is an insatiable and sizable demand and push for innovation from homegrown companies and innovators in Canada. There's also drivers of change in industry players and industry infrastructure. So Payments Canada is a great example of that, and companies like Interac. Also within regulators, right? I know sometimes, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, there's that tension with regulators around, they don't want to let us innovate as quickly as we want to. But in fact, there are some huge champions of change and innovation within the regulator community. And so I think those are the primary drivers of the change that we're going to see. There's, on the other side, the sources of stability or perhaps moderating that change, not innovation. Number one is, the reality is we have an entrenched banking oligopoly in Canada. And there are many great things about that. And with respect to Ramesh down there, of course, my friend and partner, that is, when you're winning a game, you don't want the game to change. And so there are, that is a tempering force in terms of new players to market and new innovation. But it's the reality, and it also helps the country function very well. So it's not in itself a bad thing, but a source of tempering of some innovation at times. And again, I'll come back to regulation, right? Getting the balance right, getting the clarity, getting the tone and ability to collaborate and have the ability to take a risk on bringing something new to market in an environment where you must also work with your regulator is also a tempering force. And we heard, again, Charles Andre talk about it earlier, wanting to work within the system, not against the system.
So do you think those trends or those drivers favor peoples?
I do. Mm-hmm. I do. I think there is a very, very healthy demand for innovation in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And do I want to encourage my competition? Yeah. I'll say there is far more opportunity than we can get to, and of course doing it responsibly. Mm-hmm. And so that is huge opportunities for us.
Thanks, Ramesh. Looking forward, what do you think some of the biggest trends are that will drive transformation in payments from your perspective?
I think, I'll just kind of double click on what John said a little bit, because that's a big trend, which is customer expectations. And we see, even Erica this morning mentioned how the changing expectations is not within just the banking industry that we see. The retail customer is looking at Netflix or Starbucks or Uber apps and so on. So that kind of experience is expected from the financial services firms. And you can take it beyond the retail customer to the commercial customers. Across geographies, they see, what they get out in other geographies, or, across different players in the marketplace. So you see the retail and the commercial customer kind of demanding that level of experience and expectation on service. And for us, payments is a large part of what we do. 35% of the bank's revenue is somehow influenced by payments. 90% of the data comes out of payments. So this is a very, very important thing that we make sure that we understand customer needs and expectations as we think about the future. And the other thing, again, I was kind of going to say similar things about the access. Open access is a huge driver in Canada, and the rest of the world is, we're kind of going through this process, and a few other countries have gone through this. There's a lot for us to learn. We are in a great, fortunate position. Unlike many other countries, we are highly banked. Financial inclusion is high. Mobile penetration is high, highly digital country. So there's a lot we can learn in terms of, hey, how have others kind of gone through this process? What did they, what they get out of it? What do the customers get out of it? Plus, what are the constraints and things, pitfalls like fraud? Nuno is here from Feedzai. A lot to learn from other countries and other players as to how we can kind of prevent and plan for that in advance. We saw the earlier panel kind of industry players here. There's a great collaboration that's happening here. So there's a lot we can there's a lot of things going for stability for us as we get into this new world. But those are the couple of drivers that, I would agree with John.
Yeah, thank you. Nuno, trends that will drive transformation in payments. What are some of the major ones you see?
Yeah, so we look at it, from our lenses, let's say, on how do we keep the system safe. But years, if I'd have to give, 3 years, what I would give. More and more, you see the consumerization of experiences. So not only retail consumers, that's a given. They want to have, let's call it a Uber-like or a Starbucks-like type of experience. But also the same now applying to the commercial clients. They want to have the same level of experience. Everywhere in the world that I see, they don't. Commercial banking, it's still 20 years backwards from where it should be. So that's going to massively change. People want the same. And then what I would call, I think finally, with new advancements in that we've seen in AI over the last 3-4 years, you're going to have the delivery, what you see in other industries, mass personalization, starting first with retail and then evolving into commercial. And what we've seen throughout the globe, and the previous panel was talking about RTR, and I'm like, with all due respect, that doesn't matter. It's just one more mechanism, it's just one more method. There's going to be a plethora of them. There's going to be a bunch of them, and we all have to adopt and just be comfortable with that. So the way we see it, it's the consumerization driving this from an offering standpoint, mass personalization. From an experience standpoint, they don't care what rails they use. All they want to do, what consumers want to do, is buy goods and transact. And then AI will play a fundamental transformative role. I believe that this will provide the emergence of new players that today we haven't even conceptualized clearly. But I also see now on our world that the same tools, the multi-rails, the many rails, the instant payments, the real-time payments, the AI, Gen AI are going to be used for the bad actors. And we see now the weakest link being the person. Scams was something we wouldn't talk about 3 years ago. Today, it's the topic of today, and it will augment that. So it's this delicate balance between how do we enable and give these mass products and benefits to consumers and commercial alike, but at the same time keep them safe. So it's that fine line that these technologies essentially enable both sides.
Yes. Lacy?
Nuno, you touched on AI, and if you caught the opening keynote by Visa Canada's President Nikhil, you would have been introduced to this concept of AI-driven commerce, which is really going to change the frontier of payments and frankly, how we buy and sell goods and services. It's going to result in really hyper-personalized recommendations based on your likes and dislikes, and really take that decision-making weight off of your shoulders. But with all great new innovations, there's things we need to be mindful of, risks, challenges. So I think the thing that's going to be static with all these innovations is customer trust, and that's going to be paramount in this experience. So with AI-driven commerce in particular, that I need to have trust in the agent that's making purchases on my behalf. We need to have trust that merchants are going to be paid, and financial institutions need to have trust that I am in fact who I say I am and enabling this agent. So I think that's going to be really critical, especially as we deliver more and more experiences that customers are expecting.
Yeah, excellent. Another thing that I think about quite a bit as we prepare for a future where the payments ecosystem is much more open and we have the real-time rail in place is just how Payments Canada functions as one to many, ensuring that we don't have to have people get in line to get on the rail, but instead we're enabling many different use cases, so helping to drive that competition that you're so excited about, John. So what as you as leaders look at it, how do you believe we ensure that we remain agile and responsive to the pace of change that we're going to see? Ramesh, I'll have you.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Great question, and I think the earlier panel was very reflective of what it means to be, collaborative and agile. Agile just doesn't mean like daily scrums and just getting everything done iteratively again and again and again, but it's also very important to understand what exactly do we need. And in Canada, in terms of the requirements here, understanding the environment we have and the very kind of unique situation Canada is in requires a fit-for-purpose solution. And that panel really described, coming together as a group and collaborating well to kind of ensure that we define what for example, I think it was Todd who was talking about ISO 20022 and the promise that was there about 5-6 years back. Maybe we didn't really understand what the client really requires, and we built something and waited for people to come, and it really didn't take off too much. And even now we're struggling to get large corporates onto that. So something like that, we could have kind of studied a little more and better. Similarly with retail customers, what exactly do they need? And as John was saying, or Nuno, I think it was said, the customer really doesn't care about RTR or the rails beneath. What do they actually want? They want to transfer money easily, seamlessly, with kind of the right limits, but also at the same time balancing fraud and not getting into scams and so on, which is a huge, huge problem in many countries. So I think just defining the requirements well, identifying the players, and bringing the right expertise to the table. I think we have, I think Charles was saying, all of us in the room are fantastic, and we've got the best people here. Getting the right people to work on these things and think, really think 2-3 times before cutting is what it's going to take for us to succeed. So I think we are on the right path, but agility really means all of that.
Yeah, good counsel. Lacy, what do you think?
Being adaptive is crucial because as soon as we have a new innovation, customers immediately expect it as status quo going forward. It takes something like digital wallets, for instance. If I think back to when I was in school, I really looked forward to pizza day. But now as a parent, I can appreciate how stressful that time must have been for my parents without digital wallets. They were likely scrambling to get to an ATM, taking out cash, likely popping by a convenience store just to purchasing something to get the exact change to be able to pay for the pizza. Today, I can do that from the comfort of my home, on my couch, from my mobile device with my digital wallet. And I think we often take for granted the shifts that we've accomplished and how much collaboration it's actually taken to get there. And I've heard collaboration a lot throughout the summit. One thing to point out from Visa's perspective is we recently opened up our tech stack. And if you caught the Visa's product drop last week, we introduced our intelligent commerce platform, which is really making our services and capabilities available through APIs so that we can enable agents to make purchases on our behalf in a safe and secure way. And this just would not be possible without extreme partnership. There's so many partners at the table, OpenAI, Microsoft, Perplexity, just to name a few, but I think it's a really good example, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that as an industry.
Yeah, Nuno.
I mean, from our experience, and again, talking from our perspective, and what we see in most organizations, and here's no exception, is all of these organizations are sitting on troves and troves of information that they just haven't been able to leverage. And these technologies, you see the shift, you just mentioned opening the stack and opening the APIs. We, in our case, we just bought a company that what allows us is to orchestrate all of that different data that exists in financial institutions, that it's all for better decision making. It's all for better this hyper-personalization that I was talking about. It gives you more. And I would put that every financial institution present here, whenever we talk with you guys, it's like, oh, we know we have the information, it takes too long, it takes a year, and then we have to extract it, and then we have to do this, and we have to do that. Imagine a world where all of the information is easily available, readily consumable, so that you can build agents or, technology or products. You can build a product today with a comment, with a prompt. That wasn't possible 5 years ago. Is it ready for mainstream deployment? Maybe not yet today. It will be in a couple of years. So imagine that world. So that's the transformative part. To us, we're at the point where people have built the plumbing, the rails are becoming there, the data is sitting there, and we can now finally on the cusp of being able to extract the knowledge using these machine learning techniques, these Gen AI techniques, to actually offer more. And I put it again to the consumers, to the commercial clients. We're going to see that wave of change over the next. It started in, what we know as Gen AI, generally speaking. In 5 years, in 3 years, it's going to be transformative for this market and this domain as well, across.
Good. John.
You've had some great answers from the panel so far, so I'll play cleanup on one particular topic there. And so getting back to how do we ensure agility and innovation and continuing at pace in the market, one thing that hasn't been called out here yet, again, comes back to coordination and collaboration with our regulators and our legislative environment, finding ways to bridge the gap between very, very sure, very, very clear with the art of the possible, and how to also achieve very safe while also bringing new capability to the marketplace. So that's not an assignment to the regulators, that is a responsibility of the industry to work with and bring our regulators along with us. So if you want to hear more about that, I'm on stage tomorrow morning. I'll unpack that a little bit more, and I'll make time for the rest of the panel.
We're running close on time here, but I do want to ensure that I ask this question. So we will have had more than 60 sessions at the summit this year, breakouts and panels and so on. And I am guessing that fraud has come up in every single one of those sessions. If you had one action that you would recommend organizations took with respect to fraud today to strengthen their ability to deal with it, what would you recommend that to be? And I'll start with you, Nuno.
I mean, look, it's building, on what I said, is the data is there. Now is how do we extract knowledge to understand what is mischievous behavior. It starts, we serve with like 500 financial institutions, professionals out there, and they basically tell us all the same. I have the answers in my world, I'm just not able to extract them. And sometimes I find something, but my colleagues in other organizations don't. So it starts with build fast and deploy fast on top of what you know. Use these as technologies. And then share with your colleagues in your region and in your us as the we have a truly global graph on this. Serving all these consumers and all these clients, we see the patterns of fraud going from one country to the other, from one region to the other, from one payment rail to the other, taking advantage of these multiple rails mechanisms. So I would argue, for instance, here, scams is the topic of the day. People being tricked. Not only the stereotypical old person, high net worth individuals. They're being duped into doing something. So, or in transferring them funds. Make sure that that's shared among the different stakeholders, within the country, then within, the regions, and then globally. So that would be my recommendation. And sometimes people think, oh, but if I share, I give more than what I get. No. Our experience proves exactly the opposite. If you share, of course, taking into account data privacy and whatnot, you benefit more because there are patterns that originate elsewhere in the world that you will not see coming if you don't do that.
Yeah. Well, good thing we're counting on that here in Canada. Lacy, one investment that organizations could make to strengthen their fight against fraud?
I think I would echo a lot of the same, investing in the infrastructure and in advanced fraud detection capabilities. We at Visa have been doing that. We've invested over $10 billion over the last 5 years in innovative technology to prevent fraud. I'd say it's also moving away to emerging payment types. So we're doing a lot around account to account. So I think it's looking at non-traditional payment types, especially with real-time rail coming. How do we leverage what we've learned and invest for the future?
Good. John?
The question is, what could you do? So I would say for everyone here, focus on the basics. Make sure you get the basics right around having the right eyes on the right data, that you've got the right reporting, that you've got the right culture around escalation and thoughtfulness, and really getting the basics right. Having great partners is fantastic, but if you don't have the basic systems, people, culture right, then you'll always be behind.
Ramesh, final thought?
Yeah, Susan, unfortunately, it's not one thing.
Yeah.
I think you'll have to look at the entire ecosystem of payments and look at the value chain and say, hey, right from knowing your customer, opening the accounts, provisioning, authentication, figuring out the right infrastructure, like my colleagues here said, and then educating the customer. It all takes all of that in order to kind of detect and prevent. But we've got the right tools. We've got good software, good AI tools now, and the data, which is, like Nuno said, we all have to collaborate and figure out how to prevent and detect fraud. So it's a bunch of things, but this is a massive problem. I was just looking at a stat, just cybercrime alone, with all the national actors and so on, is 10.1 trillion, growing at 30% CAGR. It is, and if you compare the payments revenue in the globe, it's just 3.1 trillion. So you can imagine everything involves payments, and we are looking at huge, huge numbers. So if you don't kind of have our guard up, it'll be a pretty bad day. And I think we'll all come together again and make sure it isn't that way.
Do you think there are financial institutions that still see fraud protection or fighting as a differentiator for them?
So I don't think. It might have been at some point in time in the past, but I think increasingly it's a network effect. So every time you add one person, it is not a linear thing. It goes, I think it's not geometric, but some quadratic way of kind of increasing the number of interactions. So we've got to be careful as we bring in much more and open access and many more players into the ecosystem. This is going to be critical for us to plan ahead and collaborate and share.
Excellent answer. All right, so we are out of time, but I'm still going to ask this one last question. 2026 Summit, what is one thing you think we will be talking about in 2026? Lacy, let's start with you.
If I have to pick one, I'll say AI-driven commerce, but right now it's more of a vision. I'm looking forward to seeing more partnerships come to life in this space and see more real applications that we'll be able to talk about next year. And it's certainly an area that we're already starting to engage more in with our clients.
Super. Ramesh?
I think we'll continue to have that RTR panel, but along with that, the AI thing is important, personalization, fraud, and also commerce. It's going to be increasingly important.
No.
My point, it's going to be, an evolution from, scams to absolutely believable deep fakes combined with real people trying to trick you. So very sophisticated mechanisms to take money away from people. And then on our side, our obligation is how do we respond to that?
Yes. John, wrap us up. 2026, what will we be talking about at the summit?
Bet we will be talking about RPAA and RTR.
Good guess. All right, so it's been wonderful to have you all. Thank you for the excellent answers.
Wonderful job.
Thank you.